Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to share with you a chapter from this book, and it's Pete Walker, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. I'm trying to see if I'm on live so I can get messages if they come through, and it says it's still waiting. YouTube's been playing up a bit. I use Zoom, and it's been causing me a few issues going directly into my lives. So it's telling me it's waiting. So it may be that I'm not going to see if anybody comes on. We'll see how it goes. Maybe I will. It's hard to know at this point, but we will see. Right, so I'm going to read. I've been doing this 4 days in a row. I'm going to try and keep it up through Mental Health Awareness Month. And I'm going to start with page 180, Pete Walker's book. And he's talking about shame is blame unfairly turned against the self. So what we have, he said, the great psychologist Erik Erikson gave us a great tool when he formulated this emotional mathematics equation. Shame is blame turned against the self. So in childhood trauma with complex PTSD, as adults, when we feel shame and we're shaming ourselves, it's basically something we're turning in on ourselves. It says our parents were too big and powerful to blame, so we had to blame ourselves instead. Now, however, we are free of them as adults, and we can cut off critics' shame supply by redirecting unfair self-blame back to our parents. And in spirituality, we've got a lot of, or in, the law of attraction, a lot of those areas, we've got a lot of people who are going on about forgiveness, and also about the idea that we don't blame people, that's wrong. But when we've been traumatized as children, we have to reclaim our the adult in ourselves, the mature person in ourselves. And clearly the reality would be that if somebody's abusive to you as an adult, you're going to deal with it. And as a child, you weren't able to. So therefore, we can have reactions that are not helpful to us as an adult. It means that we do not stand up for ourselves or walk away from situations, or maybe we're too giving and, our boundaries are not strong. So I'm going to continue reading. He says, you can redirect the anger of the critics blaming messages away from you. You can direct the anger onto the installers of the critic, or sideways onto the critic itself. You can give shame back by allowing yourself to feel angry and disgusted at the image of your parent bullying you. You can rage at them for overwhelming you with shame when you were too small and to defend yourself. So if you remember when you were small and you were abused, we didn't even know half the time that the treatment that we were receiving was wrong, or it basically was unkind behavior. We didn't know any better. And as adults, if we're affected by complex PTSD, we can be very hard on ourselves. So I'm going to continue this section here. An inner critic that has dominated us since childhood, however, does not give us its rulership of the psyche easily. It stubbornly refuses to accept the updated information that adulthood now offers the possibility of increasing safety and health and a healthy attachment. It is as if the critic has worn a flashback-inducing groove in the brain the size of the Grand Canyon. Now, any of the thinking patterns listed earlier can hair trigger an amygdala hijacking that dumps us into the abandonment melange. So that means that we feel, that we can be so critical of ourselves when things, we can blame ourselves for things that we shouldn't be blaming ourselves for. And it's not about blaming other people either, but it's about reclaiming our power. And this is the knowledge of complex PTSD. The more knowledgeable we become, the easier it is to be aligned in ourselves. I'm going to continue reading. So he says, progress in inner critic shrinking is often slow, and indiscernible at first. Our brains have become addicted to only noticing what is wrong and what is dangerous and what is wrong with us also. And, you know, we make up danger situations that don't exist, but we feel frightened and we don't realize that it's coming from childhood. And as with most addictions, breaking this deeply entrenched habit may require lifelong management. So one way we can do this is by noticing when we have this inner critic, by stopping it. And that's the whole point of, you know, for me, this book, reading this has helped me to understand that I have got an inner critic that's very unfair on me, and it's helping me to have a better life as an adult. Okay, so in early recovery work, we need to challenge the critics, negative forces over us with all of our ferocity we can muster. Eventually, with practice, we can find part of ourselves that is mad about how grossly unfair our parents' bullying and difference was. And if we don't get to the point, if we think we can't be angry, then we're basically stalling our healing. Being angry doesn't mean we go and act out our anger on other human beings, but it's acknowledging that we are angry about the way we were treated and the unfairness and the injustice. So next, we can find a part of us that is outraged that we were indoctrinated and inculcated into chronically abandoning and bullying ourselves. We can fume that this occurred when we were too young to protest or even know what was happening to us. We can gradually build our ability to say no and tell it to shut up. We can basically, this inner critic that's in our heads, whenever we catch the critic attacking us. With enough healthy inner defense, the survivor gradually learns to reject her unconscious acceptance of self-abuse and self-abandonment. Her sense of healthy self-protection begins to emerge and over time grows into a fierce willingness to stop unfair criticism, internal and external. Psychologically speaking, this is part of the process of working through repetition compulsion. Deconstructing repetition compulsion has both an internal and external dimension. On the internal dimension, we decrease the habit of repetitively perpetrating our parents' abuse against ourselves by staunchly confronting the inner critic. This then allows us to become more mindful of the external dimensions. When others reenact our parents' mistreatment, we can then confront them to stop or banish them from our lives. With enough practice, we can basically get rid of the awful legacy and what we have been taught, and then come to self-love. And we no longer will numbly accept abuse and neglect. So it's important when we work with our own inner critic, it means that we won't accept abuse from others either. So this is very important work. Further encouragement and guidance for therapeutically angering at the critic can be found in Soul Without Shame by Byron Brown's book. It's a book, and Healing Your Emotional Self by Beverly Engel. This is what he says. So what I'm going to do now is show you a little small slideshow that I'm going to share. I'm going to share my screen and show you something here. Okay. So what I have is a slideshow, and I'm going to show you basically. I can't see if anybody chats at the moment, but if I'll run through this and then you can give you a few things to think about. So here we've got the 13 steps of managing flashbacks, which I'm putting the link for this list below from Pete Walker's page below the YouTube, which you'll see. So there are 13 steps here, which I'm not going to run through because I've done in my last two videos, but you can see there are 13 steps for managing flashbacks, 1 to 5, and then 6 to 9. And if you want a Word document of this, then I'm happy if you message me. I'm quite happy to email it to you. And then you've got the 13 there, and it's from Pete Walker's book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. That is, for me, it's been the greatest book to help heal my early trauma and wounds. A good thing we can ask ourselves as we work through our lives in healing and sorting out our daily problems is, what is the problem? And another question is what is the problem? And then what does the solution look like? Because often we can get stuck in the problem and not ask people for help, because, you know, there's a lot that goes on that because in childhood we weren't able to ask people for help. So we've been taught to not ask for help when we need it, which is also damaging to us. There are people that will help us. And then we can identify your problems. So identify your problems, but give your power and energy to solutions. This is very important to take on board as well. And then a bit here about complex PTSD is not a disorder, but more a reaction to many years of unpleasant events generally experienced in childhood. So for many people that were abused as children, it went on for years, and it was probably seemed like, you know, we didn't even know it, felt like it was never ending. Children don't think far ahead, but it was just a daily barrage of unpleasantries. And it's a response. So it's not, in my view, a disorder. Jordan Peterson says here, which I've followed some of his work, he says any memory that is more than a year to 18 months old that is painful or elicits pain emotionally needs to be resolved in order to live life fully and peacefully. And I agree with that. Like, we can't, if we're looking back and we're hounded by past memories, we really need to look on them. For myself, I'm having therapy at the moment. I'm having psychoanalysis. I started it half a year ago. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is not just for myself, but because I'm helping other people understand complex PTSD and child abuse and trauma, and looking at ways to heal that. And clearly, in my view, I need to be healthy in my own mind to, you know, be doing this work also. And along with my certification in fast EFT or EFT tapping that works on anxiety. And the other thing I do is something called evolutionary astrology. I look at people's charts to also look at aspects of trauma in chart work as well. So the next slide. So painful emotions and unresolved issues are often complex PTSD related, and this means when triggered, the body is reacting to those painful unresolved memories and fears. So something I will explain to you here is that for me, the more I've worked on my complex PTSD and understood it, the healthier I've got. Prior to that, I had lots of little things that I felt were wrong with me, you know, like I had a sinus infection that wouldn't go away. I've had other things, aches and pains in my joints. The more we heal the complex PTSD and understand it, the body begins to heal, because we're not in fight and flight all of the time. And fight and flight raises our cortisol levels. So again, tapping helps with that, which if you're interested in any of that, you can ask me any questions on that also. Then here we've got the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response is a natural response to life situations which purpose is to keep us alive. The fight, flight, and freeze response is also a conditioned response to traumatic memories, events, and triggers to wanting to feel safe. So if you think about in the wild, if you've ever seen like wildlife programs and you've seen an animal being chased, then the animal will play dead until the predator animal goes away, and then the animal that's been attacked will stand up again. So it's a natural response that we go into, you know, to protect ourselves. And that's what happens in flashbacks and panic attacks. But we need to deal with it, because often there's nothing to be afraid of anymore. As an adult, we're safe, and we forget that when we're in a flashback. So we can learn how to deal with painful memories and past events, current anxiety and fears, any loss, betrayal, and abandonment issues. And I'm showing people how to access their parasympathetic nervous system to manage the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response to triggers and memories that are painful. As people learn that they do have and can have some control over the flashbacks and triggers and anxiety, then their daily lives begin to naturally transform. And there are no quick fixes, but there are tools. So that's also mentioned in Pete Walker's book. It's, you know, it's a long-term daily management plan, and then it becomes natural the more we know. Like, for instance, I used to have lots of panic attacks, and I used to, if you know EFT or fast EFT, I would tap on my collarbone, and I really now, I don't have panic attacks like I used to. I used to be scared all of the time. And so this is worth knowing, that when people get triggered or go into flashbacks, the immune system is compromised, causing people to feel unwell and below par, and can cause autoimmune issues. The ability to think straight is also compromised, as the prefrontal cortex often shuts down during the fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. And the prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that allows us to run our lives and think straight. So that's worth thinking about too. This is all knowledge, and it's worth, you know, me putting it out there, because even if it helps one person, you know, I'm being of service. That's the most important thing to me. So this is a bit how tapping works. Tapping is a powerful tool which helps to deal with the emotional torment and anxiety, thus allowing for emotional responses to be redirected and recontextualized over time. When people tap, that's what I'm doing now. Like, you might have seen this around or not, but you can Google what tapping means. When people tap, they are automatically pulled into the parasympathetic mode, which is the natural rest and digest mode of the body. And this stops the body going into the fight, flight, and freeze, fawn mode or response. Using tapping as a tool allows the organs to relax and allows the breath to regulate. And when we are relaxed, unpleasant memories can then be objectified. Like, we can look at the big picture. That's what it means. When we're in a relaxed mode, we can look at the past and what's going on and see it realistically. That's what being objective means. When relaxed, the mind gets a chance to do something different with a memory or an event, and new solutions then come into awareness. And the other thing, using tapping, the looping of unpleasant memories often experienced for years and years begin to calm down, which then allows us to think clearly and get a healthy structure going in our lives. Over time, painful memories and events are seen differently. And, you know, this is basically part of the healing process. So when a memory is seen differently, then we can feel differently about it. And often behind a lot of our pain and memories, there's a lot of grief and a lot of anger that needs to come up. Next. So the power is in our hands. That's just something to add in there. And this is my email address that people can message or email me or put comments below the video. So I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to go get rid of this and stop share, get rid of my, okay, come out of that and show. So here I'm back, and I think that's it for today. I hope that's been useful to anybody out there, and any questions or messages, I'm here for people to support people. That's what I'm doing. Okay, thanks for watching. Thank you.